It's a pretty standard story. A wonder kid is plucked out of nowhere and brought into an academy somewhere in Portugal or the Netherlands. He works his way up into the first team and becomes a league star. Now, then the big boys swoop in, throw an enormous amount of money in the face of the club, and grab the player who either flops or becomes a world talent. These first, initial clubs are what are known to some as a stepping stone club, a transition into Europe's big leagues. Some would say this is unfair to the smaller teams, who constantly get their best players ravaged by those who can throw more lucrative offers at them. And others say it's just the football hierarchy and that they should know their place. So today, let's take a look at how these stepping stone clubs make so much profit in world football. To be a fan of these clubs must be an odd feeling. They constantly find and lose their talents to clubs they worked hard to find and keep. But this isn't without an enormous paycheck into the club's account most of the time. Now with this money they can go again, find another player and continue this cycle of sustainable profit. Teams like Benfica, Ajax, Sporting, Monaco and lately Brighton all follow this technique, whether they like it or not. Brighton in the last 2 seasons alone have sold over £80 million worth of players just to Arsenal. And even though they are firmly in the race for a European position, that figure could have easily jumped to 150 million if Moises Caicedo got his transfer wish to move up to the top of the Premier League table. This buy low, sell high model can work for clubs who know that they have the resources to successfully scout and develop young players that will eventually fit the mold of a top level player. This has worked very well in the Portuguese league, where Brazilian talents find it relatively easy to move up to a country that harbours the same language and has an adjustable league jump along with European exposure. Eventually, big clubs will come for these players if they perform well, and the business thrives. But the fans of these clubs are undoubtedly suffering. Following the deadline day transfer of Enzo Fernandez, Benfica fans were left feeling disappointed that Enzo was allowed to leave without a replacement being found for their midfield. With this, the club's upcoming Champions League hopes will surely take a hit in the later stages, but it wasn't like they had much of a choice. Fernandes was pushing for his Chelsea move, and according to Benfica president Rui Costa, he quote, didn't want to be here and showed no commitment to Benfica. Now, it's not unusual for players to push for this step up in their career, especially with Premier League's enormous wealth. But should this really be happening in this case? Well, the short answer is no. Benfica and Chelsea both finished at the quarter-final stages of the 21-22 Champions League. And it could be argued that Benfica are in fact the ones placed better in this season's Champions League, given Chelsea's current struggles. They are also at the same Champions League odds, according to Sportsbet. So realistically, it shouldn't be too difficult for clubs who are performing well like Benfica to keep their players. That is, until money comes into the equation. In the business of football, a club like Benfica would loosely be run like this. To compete in the big competitions, you need to keep your top players. To keep your top players, you need to pay them more. But to pay them more, you need more money, and you can't make more money without selling your top players. It's a cycle that unfortunately forces Benfica to remain where they are in the football hierarchy. Now, even if these clubs can compete in the big competitions, the players who shine will always be taken on by bigger clubs with more money to throw around. Take Ajax's legendary 18-19 semi-final reaching Champions League squad, boasting now household names like Frankie de Jong, Matthias de Ligt, and Hakim Ziyech. None of these players stayed on for more than a season, and today, only Dusan Tadic is still at Ajax out of the entire XI. It's risky business putting all your eggs in one basket when buying a player from just one tournament, but some pay off, and some don't. The fact here is that rich clubs can just take whatever they want from the smaller clubs without thinking too much of it. After all, they're not here to make profit from their transfers. If the player flops, they can just buy someone else. In fact, the big teams almost never make a profit on their players. For example, Chelsea sit first for lowest net transfer balance since 2019, at minus 614 million, with Manchester United and Arsenal not too far behind. On the contrary, clubs like Benfica and Ajax sit in net profit well over the 300 million mark, showcasing this disparity between consumers and producers. The big, rich teams are the consumers, and the small teams are the producers. And in business, the consumer is always the more powerful. So the big question here is, will any of this change? Well, no. The Premier League is continuing its trajectory of creating a monopoly over the financial football world, and it's already apparent to see. Players from big, top-of-the-league clubs abroad are coming down to relegation-threatened teams in the Premier League, simply because there is more money. We've seen a newly promoted team like Nottingham Forest spend over £180 million on new players just this season alone, more than the likes of PSG and Barcelona. And when considering the fact that 10 out of the 12 biggest spenders this current season all come from the Premier League, it doesn't look like these figures will become much out of the ordinary for future transfer windows. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.